Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and today we begin our Forbidden Light deck analysis, starting off with BeastBox, definitely an anticipated archetype. We are going to be starting off with the slideshows because the cards have not been released yet, so we'll be going through the basic concept, going through the list itself, looking at a few tech options, and ending off with a few matchups. So hopefully you do enjoy, please leave a like if you do, and let's get straight into it. First of all, with the basic concept of the BeastBox archetype. What do I mean by BeastBox? Well, basically it is the combination of combining all these new cards that we finally gain to make Ultra Beast as a tag relevant, finally. So we get the cool stadium, we get Beast Ring, and Naganadel itself is a nice introduction to Ultra Beast because it seems to be synergized all around having as many Ultra Beasts in your deck as possible, really. And that is finally the case with the new set. Buzzwole especially seems to be picking up in pace because it gains a lot from the new set. In this list, it's going to be utilizing the new energy acceleration from Beast Ring. There's also things like Diancie, Prism Star, and the Beast Energy as well that you can capitalize on for this and in other lists even. So Buzzwole seems to be like a big front runner coming out of the new set, and this deck is going to try and take advantage of that Beast Ring synergy that Buzzwole has, as well as the fact that Buzzwole has the Ultra Beast tag in the top right corner, which is all important for this list. And the overall concept of BeastBox is very simple. It's the good old looking at the bottom left corner and seeing what good Pokemon have as a weakness. And in general, being a split of Psychic and Fighting right now covers wide bases. As I just mentioned, Buzzwole looks to be very powerful, so having a Psychic element to your deck is going to be very strong. Having the Fighting element, one of the reasons why Buzzwole has currently been so popular is because it's so good at going toe-to-toe with Zoroark decks at the very least. So this deck continues with that strategy, looks to capitalize on hitting other Buzzwoles for weakness, as well as helping out against the Buzz counters that some people may be playing, and even in higher counts than previously because of how powerful it looks to be from the new set, and also still having that nice fighting coverage that Buzzwole has currently got and will continue to have, really. So that's the overall concept. So let's jump into the list. First of all, with the Pokemon, you can see there's a few new cards from here. There's going to be the 4-3 line of Naganadel GX. I don't really know how to pronounce it, so someone can help me in the comments below. I think some people have said like Naganadel and stuff, which kind of makes sense because of sort of the anatomy of the Pokemon, but I think Naganadel also sounds quite cool. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I'll get told by someone eventually. First of all, let's look at the Poipole just above it. It's a 70 HP basic Psychic that does have the Ultra Beast tag, which is very important. It has 2 attacks, Spit Poison for a colorless, poisons the active, or the opponent's active, which is fine. And for a Psychic colorless, during your opponent's next turn, if this Pokemon is knocked out, your opponent can't take any prize cards. So it turns itself into like a Robo-Sub with 70 hit points for a turn, I guess. But it's rarely relevant because we don't play any Psychic Energy. We only play Beast Energy to fulfill this cost, and I don't think you'll ever be attaching a Beast Energy to a Poipole in order to use Knockout Reviver, so I think it's a bit of a waste of the Prism Star. So really just concerned about the Poison attack, which I guess is something you can do on turn 1. However, the 210 HP Stage 1, which I won't repronounce the name of because I'm not too sure of it just yet, is an Ultra Beast itself, and its first attack for a colorless energy deals 20 times the number of your Ultra Beasts in play. That includes itself, and will also include all the bench Poipoles you'll have, as well as the Buzzwoles. And you can see as well, we've got the new Buzzwole right alongside it, which also has the tag. And that's why we're also going to be playing Dawnwings and Kartana, which I'll get to in a moment. It then has the Jet Needle attack for a Psychic and do colorless, which again, just like the Poipole, it's rare that you'll be using this attack because we're not playing DCE for one thing, and we're not playing Psychic Energy, but we could fulfill the cost with a Beast Energy, I guess. With Choice Band and Beast Energy, this can actually hit 170, but it's still quite expensive for what this deck can achieve. But bear in mind, you can even Beast Ring to this guy. So if you go for a Beast Energy, Prism Star attachment to this guy, Beast Ring, then Jet Needle alongside the Choice Band can hit 170, so don't sleep on that. It can still get one-hit KOs on lower HP GX Pokemon, so bear that in mind. And it's not affected by weakness or resistance, that's fine. And the Stinger GX attack is also a pretty cool option that you won't use too often, but once again, don't forget that Beast Ring does synergize with this card, so it may be a little more often than you would first think. It does for 3 colorless, shuffle. Both players shuffle their prizes into their deck, then each player puts the top 3 cards of their deck face down as prize cards. So it essentially resets the state of the game in terms of how far along both players are to winning. And obviously it gives your opponent the incentive to get the first attack back on you. But if you can combine it with something like an N and a knockout, or sorry, an N and a Stinger GX, getting them to a lower hand size, maybe you can have the superior board state at that point. Also bear in mind that the Stinger GX gets you back, or gets your opponent back to 3 prizes, which again helps Beast Ring to potentially get a new reactivation during the game to get even more energy on the board for backup attackers, for example. So pretty cool. If you're very behind on prizes, it can get you back into the game. And even as an aggressive option, if the opponent, for example, is dead drawing pretty hard, you can actually attach your way up to Stinger GX, and instead of going for like jet punches in the early turns, you can go for an early Stinger GX, put both of you to 3, and if they've just sat there with, 60 HP basics, draw passing, you're pretty close to winning the game just by getting off like one more beast raid. Then you're ready to like finish the game out quite easily with things like Buzzwole on Lele's, or even just Naganadels continuing to two-shot your way to victory. So very cool GX attack option. I think a lot of people sleep on the fact that this is Beast Ring synergistic as well, so it will come up more than not, I would say. I think Absorption GX is still a phenomenal GX attack that you will be going for on your own end, or have the potential to do so, but don't sleep on Stinger GX. It's also a cool option that I think could bail you out of really weird games, and that can come up sometimes. Onto Buzzwole, 3 copies. He's still probably the thing you'll want to start with as much as possible. Playing 3 is decent because we have so much search in the deck via Ultra Space, the new stadium, as well as Ultra Ball. So it's similar to playing something like your Brooklet Hill in terms of Buzzwole Lycanroc builds. You can get into your Buzzwoles quite quickly, you can get jet punching, setting up damage quite nicely. As you can see, 30-30 combines nicely with Beast Raid. If you have 5 Ultra Beasts in play, it's doing 120, so with Choice Band you can get to 180 after early jet punches, so that can be synergistic, definitely. And in general, Buzzwole is the fighting part of the deck, which is cool. Knuckle Impact and Absorption all become very realistic attacks to use when you combine it with Beast Ring on certain turns, so yeah, really, really good, powerful attacker. We've seen it all over the place, and I think it just gets better in this deck. Then we have, just beneath the Buzzwole GX, we have the new Buzzwole from the set. It's a 130 HP basic Pokemon, again an Ultra Beast, which is very important. It has the Sledgehammer attack for a fighting energy. It does 30. If your opponent has exactly 4 prize cards remaining, it does 90 more damage, so 120 for 1. This can go as high as 180 for 1 if you attach the Choice Band and the Beast Energy to it, which is actually insane. And can be a nice response one-hit KO style card. It also provides us with a non-GX attacker, which is really important because it's really the only one we have in the deck. There's things like Hooper, there's things like Zygarde coming out in the set, and having at least a card to answer that is pretty cool. And just in general, being a nice early game response card to something like a Mew EX or a Zoroark GX is going to be really big, because the opponent can take a big 2 prizes early on, for example, and you can respond on that quite quickly, whilst also throwing a chunky non-GX into the active that they then have to gust around or find a way to one-hit KO, which is a little bit awkward. My cats are going crazy behind me, take no notice of that. It does have a second attack, Swing Around, which does 80, you flip 2 coins, it does 20 more for each heads. Not hugely relevant, but again, Beast Ring, it's another target for this card, and if you have nowhere else to put the energy, it can go on here for more sustainable damage after a Sledgehammer. If people Guzma around this guy after using, or after going down to 4 prizes, and you do the Sledgehammer attack, people will try and ignore this card, so going into Swing Arounds, especially against things like Zoroark, with Beast Ring, Choice Band, you get straight back into that one-hit KO range, so that's pretty cool for you. Couple of Lele's, I don't think you want to play more than 2, just because Naganadel is one of your main attackers, and having any non-Ultra Beast Pokemon on your bench is going to be a problem for you. It limits your damage output, but still having the option is obviously going to be important. And then we're going to play these 2 Tech Ultra Beast Pokemon, really because they're good ways to fill up your bench, whilst also offering something on their own end, really. Kartana GX, especially a much better card now that we have the Ultra Space Stadium, can be a much more searchable means of having an enhanced hammer, so having this on the right turn can be a big tempo swing against certain decks. For example, if someone's charging up something on the bench, you can take a KO on the active, slice off as well in the same turn, and they may not have a response in the following turn after that. And just the fact that this is searchable makes it better. It's potentially recyclable as well. We are playing Super Rod in here to try and recycle Pokemon and energies, so that's always an option if for some reason it gets knocked out, or if you get paralleled or something like that, you can recycle it, replay it, and get the value all over again. Dawnwing's Necrozma GX with that invasion ability is pretty nice. You're not too concerned about the dark weakness because you are playing such a heavy fighting variant, so you can be fairly comfortable. You don't even have to play it against a Zoroark, really. The reason we're playing this is because both Pokemon, as our main attackers, really do prefer having Choice Band attached to them for damage output. And the Dawnwings are just so useful at giving you freedom of movement. Obviously synergizes with Knuckle Impact, so you can potentially chain that attack, and just in general moving between the attackers. Obviously, if the opponent has a Psychic weak deck or a Fighting weak deck, they're going to be throwing non-Psychic weak, non-Fighting weak Pokemon at you, so you can switch between your dudes to make sure you have the best attacker each turn. So Dawnwings with that invasion ability gives you some nice maneuverability whilst keeping Choice Bands on the right places, really. Onto the items, we are going to play that Super Rod, as I mentioned. I prefer Rod to Stretcher, even though it's a little bit less immediate, because we have Beast Rings, and if you have early Sycamores and stuff like that, you want to get those basic fightings back into the deck so you can Beast Ring them all back. Really, this deck is all centered around the two new Ultra Beast cards that you're seeing on the screen, really. Beast Ring and Ultra Space, two very, very high power level cards, and we're trying to cash in on those as much as possible. So I like the Super Rod, gives us options for getting back basic fightings, which is cool, and lets us be as aggressive as possible with our Sycamores without as much ramification, really. Then we are going to play the 4 copies of this new amazing item card, Beast Ring. You can only play this card if you have, or if your opponent has exactly 3 or 4 prize cards remaining. You get to search your deck for up to 2 basic energy and attach them to one of your Ultra Beasts, then shuffle your deck. So there's a lot of intricacies to this card. The opponent can't play around having a point in the game where they have 3 or 4 prize cards remaining unless they're like a mill strategy. So you will at some point be able to get this Beast Ring activation, and it's just incredible acceleration, especially for something like Buzzwole, which becomes a one-hit KO machine as soon as it has 3 energy on it. It's just really, really nice. As I said, it also can be decent for the Naganadel, just for using that GX attack as well. So really, really nice item. You want to have some power draw in the deck to try and hit, if you hit 2 of these on the right turn, it can be amazing. And just think, if the opponent can't take, if they're down to 4 prizes, they can only take 1 the following turn. You have another turn to try and get Beast Rings going. Or if they are at 3, they're either going down to 2 or 1, because they're so, they have to be prepared to go down to 2 or 1 the following turn, no matter what you can come up with, because otherwise it's just going to get crazy how much acceleration you can get on the board. It's really can get out of control if the opponent leaves it for too many turns. So it's definitely an interesting card, and forces the opponent to go aggressive on prizes once they start taking them in the first instance. So that's really cool. Then we have the Ultra Balls, still 4 copies. I'm preferring it to 4 copies of Ultra Space right now, just because Lele is still a thing. But there is some reason to actually flip-flopping the count and just going for 3 Ultra Ball, 4 Ultra Space. That's how much I rate the new Ultra Space card. I think it's very good. 3 copies of Choice Band, as I mentioned, amazing math fixing for Naganadel, as well as Buzzwole. And 3 copies of Floatstone. I think even alongside Dawnwings, I like playing 3 copies just because there are chunky retreat Pokemon throughout this list. And the Ultra Space, once during a turn, the player may search their deck for an Ultra Beast, reveal it, and put it straight to the hand. It's much better than Brooklet Hill in that regard because it goes from hand rather than onto board. So even just in terms of deck thinning, it's always live. Whereas Brooklet Hill, if you have a full bench, it's not always live. And at the same time, it's Ultra Beasts, not just basic Pokemon. Like, again, I'll make the comparison to Brooklet Hill. Brooklet Hill's an incredible card, don't get me wrong. We've seen it's seen play since its release. And Ultra Space is just a tier above because it goes to the hand, so it's much more flexible than Brooklet Hill, and it can get more than basic Pokemon, so it also serves a great purpose for this Naganadel list, because it makes the deck very, very searchable. It's like when you see Zoroark decks playing like 2 or 3 copies of Evo Soda at times. Ultra Space is essentially doing that for getting you into turn 2 Naganadels effectively, but also has usage throughout the game because it's getting you Ultra Beast to increase your bench size, as well as just having Buzzwoles on the board early game or any point in the game. It has the synergy with Kartana, and it's just an incredible card overall. I really am looking to make a 4th space for this card. I think it is just very, very strong, and it's our only means of fighting for Stadium. We don't play blowers in here, so just 3 physical copies right now. I could consider going up to 4. I really do think that it's a strong card, so potentially a 4th spot is mandatory if you can find a space. On to supporters. Even with the Ultra Space and the Ultra Balls, I'm still happy to play a Brigette, I think. Because we are playing 10 draw support cards, I think realistically, if you can turn 1 Lele, find yourself Brigette, you're likely to have a turn 2 supporter in hand to draw you out after that. So getting the early multiple Poipoles, multiple Buzzwoles, get your targets ready so that Naganadel's actually doing good damage on turn 2. It's all well and good playing no Brigette in here and just relying on Ultra Space and Ultra Ball, but the Naganadel, like on a turn 2 scenario, it's not likely to be doing more than like 50 or something like that without a choice band, so I still like having the 1 copy of Brigette. It's still very safe and secure. A couple of copies of Acerola. Naganadel is a single energy attacker, and just like we've seen with Zoroark, being a single energy attachment, relying on Acerola, this deck can do the same. I think it's a little bit jankier potentially, but I think especially after something like a Stinger GX, if you get hit with an attack, you can Acerola back up, go into a new attacker, and start smacking, and it can be really nice and synergistic. So I think it's just a no-brainer. It's even nice with early game Buzzwoles, to be honest. If you're just going to attack with a 1 energy Buzzwole, they commit into you. You can just reset the turn and get a free Jet Punch off, and it can be, again, very potent. So I really like playing 2 copies of Acerola. I can see this being somewhat of a luxury card, especially because we're not playing anything like Guru or Octillery to keep our hand fresh. So I'm not too certain on this card, but in theory, it seems to have nice synergy here. 3 copies of N, just for some nice shuffle draw and pretty stable. Same thing for Cynthia, really. I think you can play around with the counts of these 2 supporters, depending on how much you want to use Stinger GX, really. How much you want to Jet Punch in the early turns, compared to how much you want to just go crazy with B-String. I think individual games will decide which route you go. I think this deck will have some intricacies in terms of how to play it. There'll may be times where you intentionally go down in prizes in a matchup just because you can Jet Punch, set up KOs, go for a Stinger, and then potentially have like a 3 prize turn after ending them to 1, for example. You know, there will be cool plays for this deck. It's not just a straight race build like something that you'd see from like a Buzzwole Lycanroc style deck. I think this has more tricks up its sleeve thanks to that Stinger GX attack. So I can see potentially even going up to 4N. That's only if you're feeling that you go defensive in a lot of matchups, but I feel quite often this has the burst potential because you're still playing Buzzwole at the end of the day, that you could be on the aggressive side. So right now I've gone straight down the middle, and it's going to take a bit more testing to find out which is the superior option there. We are still going to play 4 Guzma, as I mentioned, carving through the format thanks to hitting ×2 weakness. But the opponent's not just going to feed you these cards. You're going to have to try and access them on the bench, hit those Lucarios, hit those Buzzwoles and all that good stuff, hit the Espeons, and make sure you're taking those 2 prizes. Guzma's going to be fantastic for that, let alone in the early game. Going to be great for Buzzwole, dealing with Zoruas early on and stuff like that. And finally, 4 copies of Sycamore. I still like having high counts of this, just because the more beast rings you hit, the more likely you'll win the game. So just having the most aggressive draw card in the deck makes sense for those swing turns when you want to beast ring up as much as possible. So make sure you have your Sycamores handy for that time. And finally for energy, we're just playing 10. We are playing the Beast Energy, the new Prism Star card. I'd love to play more copies of this, but you're not allowed to. For those who don't know, it's Rainbow Energy when attached to any Ultra Beast, and also gives you an additional 30 damage buff. So it's as if you're putting on a choice band, but in an energy attachment. That's absolutely absurd. Really, really good damage modifier for you, and it's just a staple for any heavy Ultra Beast variant, and this is, you know, as heavy as it gets. It's literally BeastBox, so there you go. And we're playing 9 copies of Basic Fighting. I've debated playing Strong Energies. It's obviously an incredible card, and it's one of the reasons why fighting has been so prevalent for so long. But it's one of those things where Beast Ring, in my eyes, is the biggest thing you want to... Like, the reason you're playing this deck is a lot of the time because the Beast Ring turn where you can get, like, 4 energy. And that's why I want to have 9 copies of Fighting, so we have plenty to, you know, attach to our Naganadels and Sycamore through our deck, and also have, the potential to hit, like if you have 3 beast rings on a crazy turn, you can actually cash in on those and you can actually get all those energy out. That's also why I mentioned the super rod earlier, to try and make sure we can cycle these basic fightings. So we are just going to go for 10 energy. I think it's plenty when Naganadel and Buzzwole can be efficient single energy attackers and your acceleration comes from the deck, so you don't physically need to see them all that often. I think it's reasonable to play 10 overall. So here is the list in full. As I said, potentially playing strong energies is an option for you, and I'll talk about that in the text in the moment. But if you want to just pause the video now, that's absolutely fine, and we will carry on with the list. First of all, we have tech options. I've mentioned strong energy a bunch. I'll go over it a bit more here. I don't think you ever play 4 copies of strong, but weaving in 1, 2 copies, I think if you go up an extra energy to 11, I think 11 total, I should say, you can then cut 2 basics to bring in 2 strong energies. I think that's reasonable. The only considerations there would be that Naganadel can't obviously attach them, which is awkward for you. And at the same time, it's not something you can beast ring. So that's something you should bear in mind. I've also got the Diancie Prism Star here. Essentially what I'm saying with this whole slide is that there could be a chance that Naganadel isn't strong enough. And in that case, you can revert the deck much more towards a Turbo Buzzwole variant, and you start trimming down the Naganadel line. I think Ultra Space is a very good card. It's comparable to Brooklet Hill, and in a list like this, I think you'd keep the Ultra Space instead. There could definitely be a point where you just go to a 2-2 Naganadel line because it's so searchable with your stadium. And then you say, you know what, Diancie is too strong of a card not to play. Strong Energy is too strong of a card not to play. Even, some element of Max Elixir in addition to Beast Ring could be thrown into the deck. You could go much more as a Turbo Buzzwole route with just having Naganadel GX as a tech attacker for mirror matches and for dealing with Mew GX and Espeon GX and those sorts of Pokemon. So there's definitely that school of thought, and it's something that I need to test out myself. Right now, I've given you a very simple baseline of BeastBox with the thick Naganadel GX line. Fingers crossed that that's a good enough card to actually succeed. If not, I can see Naganadel still having a place in the metagame as just a 2-2 count to help out mirrors and such, because having a single energy attacker that can respond on 3 energy attackers is going to be beneficial to you at the end of the day. But really, it's a testament to how good Strong Energy and Diancie are that we can consider playing a list like that. And we do feel a bit of a loss when we're not playing them in our list. And that's, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth playing it or not just yet. I need to test it a lot more myself. And finally on the right, there's a couple other cards. If we do go more towards an aggressive Buzzwole route, as I said, you can even consider playing some more non-Ultra Beast cards and accept that Naganadel is more of a counter option. And maybe something like Oranguru could be an addition at that point. You don't have the nice Brooklet Hill synergy that other Buzzwole builds have, but having the one-off Guru isn't going to be too painful. And one of your more awkward matchups is Greninja, and whenever that's the case, you've got to consider something like a Giratina to help out in those situations. So bear those techs in mind. Overall, the main consideration is it's more about morphing the deck, I think, than just having tech options in here. It's whether or not the Naganadel is a standalone strong enough attacker, or if we need to trim down that line a little bit, making sure we still have enough Ultra Beasts. Make sure you have 3 Buzzwoles, 1 Kartana, and maybe a 3-2 Naganadel line, or even a 2-2 Naganadel line. That'll still be enough to 1-hit KO Buzzwoles in mirror matches, especially with choice bands. So I think if we do go down to a cheekier, thinner line of the Naganadel, more of a tech option, we can see the introduction of, once again, Diancie is just an incredible card that you'll be happy to sleeve up at any opportunity, as are Strong Energies as well. So do bear that in mind. It could be a direction for this list, but as of right now, I'm just showing you the heavy Naganadel variant. Onto matchups. I've given you a whole plethora of decks, really. Starting with, the Buzzwoles and the Zoroarks and stuff like that. As you can see on the far left, and then it goes into more speculative decks, and then also some new decks to the far right column as well. So as of right now, I feel like it can stand up to the big boys. It's pretty good against the other Buzzwole variants, pretty good against the other Zoroark variants in general. I think the attacking Hooper variant would be an issue for you. Same for Greninja. In general, you want to be dealing with GX Pokemon because Buzzwole's so good at taking one-hits. And against things like Greninja especially, your energy acceleration is based on them taking prizes, which Greninja doesn't do for like 3 or 4 turns, so that could be awkward for you. Persimmon obviously has the Fates Collide Mew, which is going to hit for weakness for your entire deck. And when you're not playing strong energies, it's harder for you to respond KO on Mews, which is actually a little bit embarrassing. So do bear that in mind. And there's also the Quad Zygarde in a similar vein to the Quad Hooper variant. I don't think we have potentially enough answers to deal with these archetypes overall. And the other sort of new deck on the block, Ultra Necrozma Malamar, it's going to have a good matchup against a bunch of decks, to be honest, because it seems to be very powerful, and it'll be one that will profile very soon. But it feels like with the Psychic Pokemon that they can use to attack against you, as well as the fact that they can be difficult to one-hit KO, even for things like Buzzwoles, with that Ultra Necrozma, the fact that it can just machine gun you down could be a problem. So yeah, I feel like those are your bad matchups. In general, it looks like it's, you know, the lower tier stuff which is going to give this deck problems, and that's what makes me believe that this could indeed be a new contender for the format. I think just on typing alone, it has to be considered as an option. So yeah, rounding things off, yeah, as I just said, it looks to be a strong play. It can hang with the top tier decks pre-Forbidden Light, so if there aren't too many crazy changes, or if the changes are as expected, that Buzzwole gets much better, I think this deck can definitely perform. As I said, going to a Naganadel line and playing around with that, I think, is where we need to find the right balance for this deck. Right now, I'm going in just saying, you know what, Buzzwole is going to be played early on in the format. I want lots of Psychic stuff. But as the format begins to develop, we may trim down the Naganadel line, become less of a counter deck, which is almost how we've built this right now, and become more inherently powerful with the Diancie, with the strong energies and the like. So I think that is a direction this deck will eventually go to, but from the offset, I think this is a good baseline for you. I think the limiting factors will be these non-GX variants, how successful they are, the Persimmons, the Greninjas, the Xerneas breaks, stuff like that, and essentially just how popular Fates Collide Mew becomes. That's always going to be a potential hindrance for this deck, because as much as you can respond KO on them with your Naganadels, because they are Psychic in themselves, as long as they're hitting you for non-GX, with non-GX attackers, they're going to be the ones profiting no matter what. So those are the few hiccups for the deck. I think there's still a lot to work out with this list. It's not 60 cards set in stone, but I think it's a good starting point for the format. As I've said, tinkering around with that Naganadel line may be the key to unlocking this deck to becoming a top tier archetype, and I think it's an answer that we have to gain through testing and through seeing how the format develops. I think that's ultimately how we can eventually come to the answer. But that is going to be it for today, guys. Hope you did enjoy the first of many Forbidden Light decks. Let me know if you like the slideshow. Let me know if you would prefer proxy videos. And let me know what decks you want to see in future. We've got a load already built, ready to go, ready to record. They're going to be coming out hopefully daily, more or less daily. So do come back to us soon. And let us know everything down below. What do you think about the archetype? How thick is your Naganadel line going to be? How good is Beast Ring? All those good things. Get it down below. We'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. So that's going to be it, guys. See you in another video. I completely messed that up. See you in another video. Bye.